Hey all, welcome back to the Fire and Water Cooking Podcast. I am Darren, I'm your host, and today we have a special guest. We have Chef Owen Wyatt. He is formerly of Hestan Cue, worked for Thomas Keller. Now he is working for a company called Typhur, where they're coming out with some great new products. I'll be right back with Chef Owen Wyatt.
Smoking, grilling, getting hot and hotter, sous vide and chilling from fire and water.
Hey all, it's Darren. I want to take a second to talk about ThermoWorks and their ThermoPen and ThermoPop instant read thermometers. They are the industry standard and industry leading, most accurate, most durable, most dependable on the market. You'll find these in most professional kitchens. The ThermoPen is accurate within a half a degree, under 3-second readout time, and is the most durable on the market. The ThermoPop is a little bit more pocket friendly with about a 5-second read time, but still very reliable and dependable. Check out the ThermoWorks products in the link below. Welcome back to the Fire and Water Cooking Podcast. I am Darren. I'm your host, of course, and today I got a great guest. I don't know if you've heard of him before. You've probably seen his face. I know I used to see his face a lot before I finally got in touch with him, but I have Chef Owen Wyatt. He is right now of Typhur, but you might have seen his face from some other products, but I'm going to go ahead and let Chef Owen introduce himself. Welcome, Owen. Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me on the show, Darren. So just a little bit about myself. So I'm a chef or cook by training and spent most of my career in restaurants. Graduated from the Culinary Institute of America in upstate New York. Kind of cooked all over the place from most of California to Hawaii, some time in New York. And then, before I kind of left the restaurant industry, I was working for Thomas Keller for the better part of 3 years. And then I got the opportunity to go join the team at Hestan Cooking, where I was brought on by my predecessor there, Phil Tessier. And so that was kind of my entry into this whole smart kitchen, kind of connected kitchen concept that I've been working on for about the last 7 years.
Yeah, that's a good little nutshell, but we're going to kind of delve into some of that stuff. So I always like to start out with, no matter who I'm talking to, is kind of go back to what got you interested in cooking. I know that I kind of looked through your LinkedIn and you got your bachelor's in business. So you really didn't start out, just going to culinary school or any of that. You got a business degree and then you decided, let's go study at the CIA and get cooking. So what brought you to food in general?
Yeah. So, I kind of just was kind of naturally drawn to it from the time I was a little kid. I grew up watching the Galloping Gourmet or Graham Kerr, on TV when I was a little kid. And I just thought it was so fun to watch him cook, and he was having so much fun with kind of the audience. And then, just kind of at a young age, started playing around in the kitchen, scrambling eggs. My aunt taught me how to make crepes. And so, I wasn't really serious about it, but it was just like a fun hobby. And it helped that my mom doesn't necessarily like to cook. She's great at a lot of things. Cooking is not her favorite thing to do. So she said I learned to cook out of necessity, but it's something that I always enjoyed. I kind of got drawn into the restaurant industry. I was in high school and I became a busboy at kind of a high-end Mexican restaurant, and I kind of fell in love with it. I really enjoyed just kind of the culture and the people. It's kind of a crazy crowd, and I really like that. And then, I was making tips and things like that, which also helped. And I didn't start cooking till I was actually in college, when I went to Chico State to get my business degree. I needed to make some money, so I started out pretty early on. I think it was maybe my sophomore year into my freshman year. I started as a dishwasher at another Mexican restaurant. It was kind of this really fast casual place, and went from washing dishes to cooking on the line. And I was there for about 4 years, I think, the rest of my time in school. And so I ended up working full time there, and then I finished getting my bachelor's degree. And when I got done, I really thought, I wanted to get into restaurant management. That's kind of where I finished up at the restaurant that I had been at. I cooked for about 3 years. And the last year I was kind of the assistant general manager there. Um, and I thought, that's kind of the lane I wanted to stick in. I like that. I liked managing people. So when I graduated, I wasn't sure what to do. So I moved to Hawaii, kind of on a whim. And I was there for about a week, and I had applied to, I don't know, maybe 20 restaurants, trying to get into restaurant management. And it's a super competitive market there because of the tourism. And, I was 24 years old. Everybody kept telling me I was too young. So a week later, I walked into, I somehow got a job interview through a mutual friend at this really small local cafe, which is really popular on the Big Island where I was living. And started cooking. So I was flipping eggs, doing the short order cook thing. And I was there for about a year and a half. And my buddy who I cooked with, there was about two of us, and we would do 300 or 400 covers a day. So a cover is like a person that you would do a day. And so it was super fast paced, and I really liked it. It was a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun together. I kind of liked the pressure. And my buddy Kalani was, basically told me, he said, you really like this. Like, if you're going to get serious, you should consider going to culinary school. And so I did. I applied to the CIA, and I had a bit of time between the time I applied and the time I actually started. It was about a year. So I moved back to California, moved back with my parents to save some money, and started working kind of at a high-end kind of steakhouse, and which was really good for me because it kind of exposed me to a little bit more finesseful cooking than what I'd been doing for the past 6 years before then. And so had a lot of fun there, got really kind of proficient at cooking meat and steaks and all that on a grill. And then it was off to the CIA. And that's about a 2-year program there. When I went there, I had kind of clear goals of what I wanted to do. I spent so much time in, the kind of casual short order cooking style restaurants. And I really wanted to move into the higher end. So the only thing I really cared about was I just wanted to go work for Thomas Keller. And so, initially, it was always about going to the French Laundry. But at the time they didn't take interns. So I ended up interning at Bouchon down the street in Yountville. And after I got done with culinary school, the French Laundry was kind of in the middle of deciding whether or not it was going to close to do a renovation, which it later did. So in the meantime, I went back to Bouchon, and I ended up staying. I just moved up through the ranks there, as a chef de partie. And then, from there, I went and worked on a project. It was a pop-up restaurant that Thomas Keller did at the Silverado Country Club called Adlib. And so that's where I was there for just about a year. I think we were open for maybe 11 months, 10 months, something like that. And, I was kind of transitioning out of the Thomas Keller restaurant group. It was, probably the most important time in my career was being there. It's just the work ethic and the discipline that it takes to, work at that level and to work for, an amazing chef like Thomas Keller. If you commit yourself to it, it's kind of like I went to culinary school to get a bachelor's degree or associate's degree, and you go work for him. You go work for him, and you're kind of getting like that master's level or PhD.
Definitely.
Not just in cooking, but just in how to work. Everything is, super detailed, the organization, which, it's a benefit to me now. It just completely changed the way I approach work and the way I approach cooking, and just kind of taking on different tasks. And so I think it's been a huge part of kind of the success I've had out of the restaurant. It's, just a really amazing time. And then,
all right.
Yeah.
So I'm going to jump in here because you
Sure.
started out, when I was younger, I started out as a dishwasher and got into the cooking on the line. And I worked at several family style type restaurants, and Denny's being one of them, where,
Sure.
like you said, on a Sunday morning at 7:00 in the morning, then you get the after church crowd, you're slamming out 300-400, you got two
That's
of you
right.
behind the line, and I've flipped plenty of eggs and cooked, mounds of bacon and sausage, believe me. And
Sure.
that's where you kind of learn how to work the checks. I mean, it's a lot more fast paced than a white linen, restaurant for sure. But
Right.
it gets you into that, learning how to do things and put together a plate that actually looks edible at a faster pace. I mean, not to say that you can compare a plate of, pancakes and eggs to what gets put together at the French Laundry, but it's still got to look edible. Somebody's paying for it. It's got to look decent, and you got to work really fast because those orders come in. They don't want to sit there for 45 minutes waiting for their pancakes and eggs to get there, and they want it to look edible when it gets there. So you're moving and you're chucking and things are moving fast. So that's always a good way to get started, to learn by fire for sure. But that's where I learned how to cook, doing that. And then I kind of moved on to some other higher end type restaurants. But I figured, when about in my mid 20s, that wasn't the life for me. The hours and the pay wasn't there. I had a family, a young family, and I was at the point where I was working 2 jobs just to try to, make a living. And it was just like, I can't do this kind of thing. If I was single, I probably could have hung in there and maybe, gone down the road and maybe went to culinary school and finished off that. But I always appreciate when people start out, even like some of the bigger ones, like, Kenji, he started out the same way. He didn't start out as a chef. He started out working, bussing tables, and then dishwashing, and then working on a line somewhere, and then going up, and then falling in love with cooking. So it's really, people can look down on it all they want, but it's a great place to start. And like you said, you stair-stepped it. Now you're at a point in your career where you went through all those stages, and now you've been through the plate of eggs and pancakes to, the 5-star Michelin chef plate. So now you went through all that. You got your dream. You worked for Thomas Keller for a while, and then now you're on the technology side of cooking. So let's start talking about that. So you worked at some really high-end restaurants. You worked at some low-end restaurants. What made you decide to make the move to go to Hestan Smart Cooking?
Yeah. So my kind of like segue into the smart kitchen and the tech side and the startup world wasn't intentional. I was kind of wrapping up, my time at Adlib and the Thomas Keller Restaurant Group, and I got a call that Chef Phil Tessier wanted to talk to me. And so he obviously had worked for Thomas as well. He was both the chef at Bouchon before I was there, and then he was the executive sous chef at the French Laundry. But more recently, he'd taken silver medal at the Bocuse d'Or in France. And so that was the first time that the United States in almost 30 years had gotten on the podium. So, it was a big deal. And then he ended up coaching the U.S. team to gold in 2017. And, when I got the call saying he wanted to talk to me, I was, pretty excited. I had no idea what exactly he wanted to talk to me about. I kind of figured, at that point, he's probably maybe doing something with a restaurant or something like that. I just really wanted to work for him. And so I met with him. He kind of told me what Hestan was planning on doing. And that was in late 2015. And, there was just a lot of things, a lot of benefits to it, pay and all these other things that were super exciting. But when he actually told me about the concept and he kind of showed me the direction that they were headed, I was pretty shocked. Like, as a cook in a restaurant, I'm not really thinking about residential cooking and what people are doing at home. To be honest, I'm a better home cook now than I was when I was working for Thomas. So, I was just really excited to work with him, and, he's such an amazing chef, and to get to kind of just get some of his time and pick his brain was kind of what sold me. And so I took the job, and, what started out, initially we were working on a completely different project than what we ended up launching at Hestan. And so, it was after about a year, I kind of had I guess gotten used to post restaurant life, and I was, I had weekends off, and my quality of life was just a lot different. I was able to go see my family and things like that. It's one of those things you don't know that you're missing it until you're kind of giving it to you. So, that was all kind of the upside, but then kind of my passion just kind of changed. It was always, I was never focused on like, I want to be this chef or I want to have this restaurant. I just wanted to be really good at cooking. I want to get as proficient as possible. I love food. I love cooking. I love going out to eat. Like that's, somebody asked me what my hobbies are, and it's kind of food. 90% of what I do, even when I'm off, is it's based around food. So I kind of grew this passion to be able to provide people at home the same kind of, results and the kind of food that they would get maybe at a restaurant, or even just if it's a piece of chicken breast, like it's going to be the best cooked piece of chicken breast that you could make at home. And so that kind of was what, led me through the last 7 years, was just kind of seeing where we could really move progress and have an impact and provide people with the ability and the tools to achieve things that they weren't able to do before in the kitchen.
So the Hestan Cue system, and I have one, and I've done a couple of videos on it. It's pretty much an induction burner that works in concert with an application, and the pans and pots that are made specifically for it that have Bluetooth built into them. You have to have a battery, so you can't just use any pot or pan with it. So, but it's very, I would say, similar to the sous vide method, where you can get specific temperatures, or a lot closer than you could on a standard induction burner or gas burner. So when you were first approached and they were putting this concept together, how much input did you have on designing it and all that? Or how far along were they?
Yeah, still fairly, there were some basic concepts that they'd kind of honed. And one of it was the Bluetooth connection between cookware and the induction cooktop. So that had been well established. When I first got there, we were using RF, so radio frequency, which is not the optimal channel for doing that, especially if you have two systems. As soon as those radio frequencies cross, you start burning things and overcooking, and it's a real mess. So that was kind of where things were at. And they'd had the ability to embed temperature sensors into cookware. From there, in the early days there, it was really amazing and kind of eye-opening for myself, and I think everybody that was on the culinary team at that point, to be able to work with software engineers and hardware engineers. And, you don't know what you don't know. And so I would think like, oh, well, they'll never be able to do this. And then you talk to a software programmer and he's like, oh yeah, no problem. You want the pot to work like a rice cooker? Like, fine. Like, no problem. Like, we'll engineer that. So it was just really amazing to me to be able to work across these different teams with different proficiencies. I was not a techie person at all. Like, besides sending an email, when I was in college, Facebook, all that stuff wasn't around. Like, I didn't know any of this stuff. It was just kind of all kind of new. So I learned a ton from them on the tech side of things. And I like to believe that they got better at cooking because we did spend a lot of time together and talked a lot about food and things like that. So it's just kind of a really amazing time of just like real collaboration. It might up until that point, even in the restaurant industry, it might have been the most collaborative time or thing that I'd ever been a part of up until that point.
One of the things that I notice, even with especially with some of the older time chefs, or some of the guys that have been chefs forever and now they have their own cooking school, whatever, the internet makes it really easy for somebody who doesn't want to, spend the 18 hours a day in a kitchen to actually go out and teach cooking. They really don't like to incorporate a lot of technology into their cooking, because what you learn at the culinary schools, they don't really put a whole lot of technology. They use the old, touch your face here kind of thing. And,
Yeah.
and so to me, I see a lot more now where it's becoming more. I mean, there's still some old timey chefs out there that they don't even like sous vide because it's too,
Sure.
they didn't learn it in culinary school. They might just start teaching it now in the last couple of years, but some of the guys that I know, they went to culinary school 15, 20 years ago. They didn't learn it in culinary school. So to them, it doesn't really exist, or it's a crutch, or it's something that, it's like a microwave, we only use that unless we have to, kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. I think there's, cooking and more kind of on the French side, not even on the French side, just in general, there's a lot of ties to the past, right? Like for me, even still now, like my favorite way to cook is going camping and cooking like on an open fire and bringing out the Dutch oven. And for me, it kind of taps in, and I love that, right? But to say that, well, I'm not going to use a sous vide circulator or a combi oven. There's with cooking, there's to set a bunch of rules and limitations is crazy. One of the best things about cooking, at least in my opinion, is it's never ending. Like you can explore, there's so much to explore. There's so many different techniques and tools. And to say that you're going to cut out, this huge part of what the current landscape looks like because it doesn't fall in line with what you deem real cooking, is kind of crazy to me. I think that, most cooks, I think, are naturally pretty curious. And so I think that's one of the things that's great about food is that there's never ending cuisines and techniques. And so I like to explore all of those. And as a chef of a restaurant, your goal is to make consistently delicious food. And if some of these tools can help you, and they do, and they're used in most of the best kitchens in the country, combi ovens, sous vide circulators. You've even got companies like Irinox, which has some really amazing tools as well. And, right now, especially, post COVID, it's really hard to get skilled cooks to come into kitchens anymore. It was a real shock to a lot of people. And I think chefs are going to have to start depending a little bit more on some of these tools because they're super helpful. And I don't see a problem with them. I think it's a good thing.
I've always had that mindset of if it can help you or gives you another option or another way to go. I've been a part of, barbecue and cooking and for a long time. And I've got my own Facebook groups and I see them at all the time on the barbecue side. You got the people that they only use they got to use a offset smoker. If you're using a pellet grill, that's cheating, or whatever, they get they can only cook a brisket, well done. One of the things when I first started mixing sous vide and barbecue, I get the old barbecue guys go, oh, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, let me ask you, can you actually make a brisket medium rare and super tender? And they're like, well, no. And it's like, I can do that using sous vide and barbecue and on the smoker. So I can create something totally different that you can't create. So why are you peeing on my, what I'm doing? Because I'm not saying that it's better than what you make or, it's just different. It's like, I like to cook things many different ways and produce many different, products. I mean, and different ways of cooking things. I mean, that's what the whole world's about. I mean, if you go to, Tokyo, I mean, there's all kinds of different foods and, they'll cook chicken a million different ways. They don't all cook it, on a smoker, a certain way to a certain temp, they cook it a million different ways. So to me, it's natural to me to mix technology and different cooking methods and even moving it, using them together, like with sous vide and barbecue, low and slow. You got low and slow and then lower and slower with sous vide, and using them together, you can make something that's totally different that you couldn't make with either one of them by themselves. So, and I that's one of the things that just when people start fighting me on that, oh no, you gotta, you can't use can't even use a thermopen. What are you talking about? Yeah, you should learn how to do the pinch method or something like that. It's like, why would I do that if I have a tool right here that I can, use to, tell me exactly what the temperature of my food is, so Yeah, it's just I think, and it's going to get more and more you see these things coming out. It's going to help people cook better, whether they're in home or even in the restaurant. So
Yeah, and I think, I see some point where, if you're a master at your craft and you think people are taking shortcuts, why does it matter to you,
right,
right? Like, it
exactly.
doesn't. Why? What impact does that have? I mean, for me, ultimately, like, if people are able to cook at home, which I think is a healthier option, anyways, regardless, you're not getting fast food or getting a bunch of processed stuff. I think that's a huge win. And if people can get really amazing results at the same time, I don't see what the problem is. I think these are all really positive things.
Well, and it expands your interest and knowledge on cooking. I make stuff at home all the time, but I still like to go out to restaurants and try different
Yep.
things. Then I like to go home and try to make it there.
Yeah.
So I'll go to a different restaurant that I haven't been to before and have something that I've never eaten before, and then go, man, I wonder how I can make this at home. And with all this technology and things that we have now, and things that are coming down the road, it just makes it so much easier and so much more fun. I love
Yeah.
gadgets. I mean, I got a freeze dryer behind me right now that's got stuff in it that, I like playing around with food in many different ways. So it's not just even
Sure.
cooking it. So to me, it's a fun thing, and it keeps me, it's my hobby, just like you. Food's my hobby, playing around with food, making different things, making people happy. So
Right.
technology is just a big part of that, because there's so much stuff that comes out and helps us become better cooks.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree.
So with the Hestan Cue, what did your focus was pretty much putting together the menus and putting together the videos. I saw a lot of your videos, and they're still pop up there on their advertisement that your face is out there. So
Yeah.
I don't know how long they're gonna just keep you on there on their videos and advertisements, but so your main focus was teaching people how to use the Hestan Cue and putting the recipes together.
Yeah. So primarily it was, doing the recipe development, and then kind of the R&D on, what are the capabilities of the Hestan Cue, and working really closely with, our culinary scientist there, Julian Weisner, who's a real sharp young guy. And then our software and hardware engineers that were in Seattle, because, they're able to make really anything happen. But they're not chefs, and they're not exactly sure what the capabilities of a temperature sensing pan should do. Right. So most of it was that. And then it was developing the content. So all of the video, the photography, we developed all of that stuff in house. And so got very comfortable, kind of being in front of a camera, doing the food styling, and that whole kind of piece of it was my, most of my responsibility there.
Well, and it's like I said, it's a decent system. I think I know that they're starting to incorporate it into the full size ranges. I think they're working with GE now to have some of that the capabilities with have the induction burner on the GE ranges, so that can work with the pots and pans. So they have the app and everything works together with it, instead of just having that separate induction burner.
Right.
So I know that they're kind of expanding it out into other functions. So I've used mine a few times. Like I said, I think there's a place for it. I don't think it's something I could use every day, especially if I'm just cooking a meal, for my family, a quick meal, cooking like macaroni and cheese or something. That's not something I'm going to use for that. So for
Right.
you, what do you see, since you're not there anymore? You don't work for Hestan, so you don't have to, say you got to use it for everything. What do you see a home user using something like the Hestan Cue for?
Yeah. It's funny, when we initially, like, the initial concept, it really wasn't to, move in the direction of the video guided recipes and, recipes that automatically adjust time and temperature. It was really, let's provide temperature control on the stovetop, which is valuable, right? It's valuable in sous vide. It's valuable in the oven. Kind of everywhere. You have a Thermomix where it sets the temperature of a blender. So temperature control is really important. That's where I still kind of believe the Hestan Cue and that technology really shines. I don't think that, on just a solo burner, it doesn't resonate as well. I think if it's on a full cooktop, like the Cafe or, one of the GE brands, that's where it makes sense. Because you walk up, instead of setting your pan to high, you're making pancakes, you set it to 400 degrees. Your first pancake's going to be just as good as your last pancake. You're not throwing away that pancake. The current product didn't land that way. It became a product for people who, or a tool rather, for people who want the video guidance. They want to know that they're going to get a very specific result, or they're going to, win every time they prepare a meal, which is fine. I think it's just it's kind of a smaller market. And you really
it's a smaller niche, right?
Yeah. And you really want to, a lot of the stuff there, it's stuff for the weekend, right? Like, yeah, we've got eggs and pancakes and all that stuff that's easy to make. But it seemed to me, after people did eggs for a little bit, they just kind of moved on to doing something that's more complex. And so they're doing it on the weekends when they want to do that, pan-seared scallops with beurre blanc or things like that.
Right.
Yeah. But I said,
for me, that's me too. Like I said, I use it when I want to use it for something specific. If I'm going to, just be cooking a normal meal, and I don't need that precise temperature control, I'm not going to bring out that special pan and that special induction burner. So, but if it was on my range already, I definitely would use it. So,
that's right.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I can understand that completely. So, and I think there's a place for, with this technology that comes out. I think there's a back and forth, and people, when they initially come out with a concept, what they think it's going to be, and then what it ends up turning into. I mean, like even with Joule, when the Chef's Dips came out with Joule, right. I don't know if they thought that they wanted to baby walk steps through every single thing like it actually turned into. Talking to Chris, I had Chris Young on before. I don't think that that's what their concept was, but I guess that's what it turned into, so, that somebody that has absolutely no culinary skills whatsoever can just press a button and get it to, be done at the perfect temperature and time. I still think you need to have some kind of understanding of cooking concepts to use any of this stuff.
Yeah, I think, the whole smart kitchen or connected kitchen, however you want to phrase that, space has been pretty slow moving. And I think it's been a very difficult space to move into across all the brands that are out there right now. You're not seeing anybody that is absolutely dominating the market. I think Innova is probably the closest, or probably one of the most successful of the brands or appliances that are out there. And I think a lot of it is trying to find that balance, right? So I think you either have someone like Joel or Hestan, where we were so content focused that there's a little bit of, you're kind of missing the core utility that you want from any appliance in your kitchen. If it's taking up real estate in your home, and specifically your kitchen, it's got to do work for you, and it's got to do it fairly easily. When you layer on a bunch of content, now you have, you're having to click through multiple screens just to cook eggs when all you want to do is just cook an egg. That's a problem. And then the other side of it is, where you have a tool that has some really great core utility, but you have to have some base knowledge to use it. And so that's kind of been one of the big learnings for me and a lot of people that I work with is, there's a sweet spot where you can bring both of those together. And so that's kind of the direction I think things will go. Cooking and the kitchen space is really interesting. There's a lot of emotional attachments that people have, whether you cook a lot, you don't cook at all. It's just a different thing, right? The rest of the connected home, people have adopted pretty quickly, whether you have a Nest for your thermostat. Basically all of it. If you've got a Ring that is monitoring your front door and all, people, no problem. The kitchen, on the other hand, is just, there's a lot more attachment to it.
That's definitely
even with my mom, right? Like I got her a Hestan Cue, and I thought, all right, she doesn't like to cook because she's not confident when she cooks. This will give her confidence. No, she just doesn't like to cook. And she didn't want that thing on her counter because it takes up space and she doesn't like the way it looks. So you kind of, it's just a trickier space. And I think, we've had about close to a decade now to kind of get some learnings and see what everybody else has done and been part of some of those learnings and experiences. So hopefully we can start to move things in the right direction. And I think a lot of people, the companies that are still around, I think have kind of learned the same thing. So I think it's going to be interesting in the next couple of years to see where this whole space goes.
Yeah, and it's interesting that, like you said, you could look back at some of the concepts and products that have come out, either through Kickstarters or what have you, programs. And I've seen, I think when we talked before, some of the different sous vide circulators or something like the sous vide unit, the guys from Apple, this whole thing that's supposed to be like the Jetsons kitchen. You put all this stuff in before you go to work and you come home and your dinner's ready. You just pull it all out. But, I'm not interested in anything like that because it's like, to me, I might as well just eat a frozen dinner. I'm
Sure.
not going to have a little, first of all, it's a small unit that can only probably have 2 portions in it. For me anyway, if you're
right.
little, if you only eat like, 6 ounces of food, you could probably
right.
feed a family of 4, but it's got too many moving parts. It's like, I don't know. It's not for, it's for a smaller crowd. Like you said, it's for somebody who really doesn't want to have to mess with cooking. They want their food when they get home, they just want to take it out of their little sous vide thing and eat it. And that, to me, that takes all the fun out of cooking. I like getting my hands dirty. I like, doing different techniques and having, that whole experience to me. But, like I said, there's people out there that'll buy just about everything. There's, single use type things where like the cinder grill where, it's really good at making a little steak, but it's a big clunky thing. Like you said, you're going to put it on your countertop just so you can cook a steak every once in a while, to a perfect, that's not something I'm going to do. But you get to see all that so that now that when you guys go back in and try to develop something else, what didn't work, what did work, and then where you want to go and kind of go from there. But it's just funny though, you see all this stuff that comes out and eventually fails, but you're learning from it. So
yeah, and I think a lot of the times people kind of throw technology into things just for the sake of technology.
Oh,
and the question's got to be like, what's the problem? Or what are we trying to make better? You have to kind of keep that the end user, the home cook in mind. Like if you're just making things to make things, it's never going to resonate. And I think the technology that we've all adapted, whether it's your cell phone, some of the connected devices I mentioned earlier, those things make your life easier. And so if you're just making things that are complex and it takes a lot of explaining to do, it gets lost on people. And ultimately in the kitchen, I think the direction the space needs to go, it needs to move into a direction where whatever you're using, whatever smart appliance, it should be just as easy as pulling out a pan and putting it on a cooktop.
Right.
So that's where I think it gets really interesting.
And you can use it for more than one thing. I mean, I think the Ron Popeil, back in the 80s and 70s and 80s, where you got the egg scrambler. All it does is scramble an egg. I'm not going to, how many of those you're going to buy, right? I don't want the single purpose or, something that only do 1 or 2 things. I want, like, just to give you an example, the Innova oven, people, it's starting to catch on more, but it's a little more complicated than, a microwave. I mean, you got to understand the cooking concepts that it's using. Combi ovens are in a restaurant are super expensive, and you got to take training on them. If you're a chef, it's not something that, you can just do, but it does a lot of amazing things. And I think those type of products, once they get legs and people can understand, hey, I can use this instead of my regular oven, or I can use this instead of my sous vide pot, or I can use this instead of this or that. I can use for all these functions. That's where it's going to really start kicking on. When you got these single use or things that can only be used for a couple of things, people don't want to have them cluttered in their kitchen anymore. So,
right. And yeah, and I mean, it's got to offer a pretty valuable,
right.
There's got to be a value offer there that's pretty, like the crock pot, that was kind of the go-to tool forever, because you could put in your stew meat and vegetables and broth in the morning and you get home and it's ready for dinner.
Right.
And so, you can be as skeptical as you want of a crock pot, but super,
Very utilitarian.
appliance.
Yeah. It's very utilitarian.
Yeah. And same thing with the Instapot.
Yeah. So let's start talking about what you're doing now. Okay. We're going to talk about Typhur.
Sure.
I mean, nobody's heard of that name, I'm sure. A few people probably, but this is your new thing that you're working on, the Typhur technology. And they are looking to be the next cooking, technology thing, the hot thing out there. And they've got some different concepts and stuff going on. So let's talk about that. So what are you working on now at Typhur?
Yeah, so Typhur, it's a brand new startup here in the US. Basically, we're looking. Our goal is to be the Dyson of the kitchen. So really high quality, high performing, connected appliances. Some of the things that we're working on are already out. The concepts are already out on the market, but we're interested in doing the best version of that. And then there's other things that are very innovative and pretty disruptive. I can't really mention just yet, but we're focused on launching 2 to 3 products a year for the next 4 to 5 years. We have a very strong vision from our CEO, and really excited to kind of join the team here at Typhur. Kind of bring my experience in the space, and then again, my kind of proficiency with the content development. And so I'm going to be doing a lot of that. And what drew me to Typhur is some of the things I'd mentioned earlier about trying to find that sweet spot between the utility of an appliance and then the content, and bringing those things together is ultimately what really piqued my interest and led me to come to Typhur.
So can you explain some of the products that you may be working on? I know you can't go into details, but can you give us a 30,000 feet, look down on what you guys are planning on? Yeah.
So, the first product that we're going to be launching, and it'll be coming, out this summer, it's based in sous vide cooking. And so it's kind of our take on sous vide. We're aiming to make, the most powerful sous vide circulator, heavy on content, but everything will live within the appliance. So connection and all of that is real common with most smart appliances now, won't be an issue. You can walk up, use it like a typical sous vide circulator. If you want to walk up and learn how to, say you want to make braised short ribs, you're going to be able to do that with, video guided step-by-step kind of coaching throughout that recipe as well. So it's pretty exciting. Here in the next couple of weeks, we're actually going to start releasing some images of the prototype that we're working on. We actually just received our first prototype yesterday. So it was the first time we've actually all got to see and touch it and start to use it. So it's a really exciting time. Our big focus right now is building the team here in the US. And, I'm excited to build a culinary team. We're actually starting to do video for our first collection of recipes next week. So excited to get back in the kitchen and, kind of get behind the camera, start developing recipes again. That's kind of where, my passion lies and what I like to do. So it's an exciting time.
So is everything going to be technology based, or you're going to have any kind of utensils or anything like that, or any kind of cookware itself that's non-technology? Or
so everything will be the kind of, we're really focused on bringing kind of science and technology with kind of the culinary craftsmanship together. So everything will kind of lean more into the tech space. again, we're not interested in just slapping technology into things for the sake of it. We're trying to be as thoughtful as possible and really bring quality solutions to real problems that people have in the kitchen and the pain points that they might have. So definitely going to be in this kind of tech space, and it's going to range from, different countertop appliances to potentially going outdoors as well.
Mhm.
And
So no Wi-Fi connected knives or anything like that?
No, it's there's been a couple of things that I've kind of mentioned that I thought would be interesting. I don't think that's quite in alignment, at least right now.
Yeah.
With one thing that I'm going to push for, probably wherever I go is I know they already exist, but they're really expensive. Like I really want a dry aging fridge that isn't ginormous and also doesn't cost $2,000 or $3,000.
Right.
Yeah. So there's things like that I'm pretty interested in, but we'll see. And as far as utensils and things like that, potentially. I mean, I think there's a lot of opportunity with some different tools, scales, and things like that as well. One of the hardest things about creating recipes in the U.S. market is that we are pretty tied to using volume measurements, when a scale is just so much more efficient, and it's easier. You don't have all the dishes because you're not using measuring spoons. You just put on your scale, makes it very easy. And then just the consistency,
Instead of teaspoons, grams and over teaspoons is definitely better. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Especially when you're baking, it's like,
that's the
baking,
best. That's the best
baking is,
example.
because baking is such chemistry. There's so much chemistry involved, and it's so much more exact when you're using, measures instead of teaspoons and tablespoons. And if you use the grams and all that, you can nail it.
And the biggest headache, at least for me, is teaching people how to season. So salt is not created equal, but the weight is what kind of brings it all together.
Right.
So if I sell somebody use a quarter teaspoon of diamond kosher salt and they use a quarter teaspoon of iodized table salt, it's going to be twice as salty. So
exactly.
But I think the biggest place where people kind of drop the ball when they're cooking is they don't season appropriately. Either they over season or and generally it's under season. And so someday it'd be nice if we kind of moved away and got on the same band, the same train that everybody else in the world is on, and go to metric.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff like that. So that's good. I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys have to come out with. And I'm glad they're taking their time with some stuff. They're not, it's not just like a one thing that they're going to stick a Kickstarter out there. And I've seen a lot of those come and go in the last few years. We've talked about it before when we were on the phone about like the, mellow sous vide, the nice wave sous vide. They had all these grandiose dreams when they got the Kickstarter out there. It was going to have a meal service tied to it and all this kind of scan your thing and it'll cook it for you. I mean, some of those things were like, and then they just never came to fruition because when they got the actual product, they had so many issues with it and so many returns that their initial, funding, dried up, and they pretty much went out of business because it's great to have a prototype and run it and see how it works. But when you go to mass market, it's totally different. I mean, some big companies have learned that, like Weber, when they had their pellet grill come out, they learned that, the few that they had as in-house as demos that were the prototypes didn't work anywhere near like the ones that were coming off the mass production line. And they had a lot of issues and had to fix them, and took a black eye for it. So I'm glad you guys are taking your time, and hopefully, you guys will make sure it's right before it gets out there for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's especially at the launch of a company, you kind of only get one chance at launching a brand in a company. So, we're really focused on, it won't be the most disruptive product on the planet. But our belief is we're going to make it, the best sous vide experience that you can have. And like you said, we're taking our time. We've got a lot of smart people. working on it. So I'm excited to get it out there.
All right. Well, I think I know you can't go into much detail because there's still a lot of things on the drawing board, and you don't want to give your competitors any kind of edge on what you guys are working on. But is there anything else you wanted to discuss about what's going on in the cooking market right now?
No, I think it's kind of an interesting time. I think we're going to have to wait and see how I know Chris Young's working on a really interesting project with a probe. And I think he's a really smart guy. And I think there's a lot of that going on right now. And so I'm excited to see what comes up in the next couple of years, and really excited to see where we take things with Typhur. I think it's, we're going to be very busy, and I think there's going to be a lot coming out here fairly soon. And we're going to be working with some really amazing partners as well. So a lot of exciting stuff coming up. But besides that, that's all I got.
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, I think, like I said, there's a lot of new things that come out, and a lot of people look at it and go, hey, that's a good idea, but maybe I could do it a little bit better. And I think that's what you guys are doing at Typhur. You're not, like you said, you're not reinventing the wheel. You're just making that wheel a little shinier, or maybe, function a little bit better than what's already out there. And then maybe down the road, there's going to be some stuff that maybe are going to be more groundbreaking and all that. But I think that's always good, because, if you learn from other people's mistakes, it's a lot better than learning from yours, right? So
yeah, absolutely. And specifically in this kind of space that we're in, it's there's a lot that we can learn from other people's mistakes and things that they've done well. And so we're set up, we're a very well-funded company. Like I said, very strong vision. So I think we're in a very good position to do things, the right way, and put up a compelling set of products that are going to be, really powerful and valuable for people.
So just to let where everybody can find you guys. So where are you guys at right now, as far as where can they look you up online? You got a Facebook page, all that. So I know your website's very limited right now. So
so we're working on redoing the website. Our CEO and engineering is based in Shenzhen, China. And so, the website that we have right now is really for hiring people here in the US. So it's very vague, but we will be getting a new website up in the next couple of weeks that will provide quite a bit more information. And I think the word is sketchy. It won't be as it's pretty vague. So besides that, you can find us at Typhur Culinary on Instagram, Twitter, and then it's, I believe, Typhur on Facebook as well. And
it's Typhur Culinary on Facebook as well. Yeah.
And right now we've got a lot of content out there, kind of, just free recipes and things like that, trying to, establish a little bit of authority in the space until we get, our first clients out there here in the next couple of weeks for people to see. So, if you're interested, give us a follow. Really appreciate it. And, we're excited to get out in front of people here in the following months.
Well, I'm looking forward to the products you guys are going to produce. They got a good guy with you. You definitely got the experience. You got the culinary chops. I like the fact that you started out, as a line cook, just slinging hash like I used to do. And then you moved into this space, and, you have the experience of helping develop the Hestan Cue. So I know that you've kind of learned some of the things that were successful with them and some of the things that weren't, that you're going to bring to this. So it looks like they're putting a good team together. They're not just throwing something out there and see if it sticks. It looks like they're really thinking this through and trying to put out products that are going to make sense. So I want to thank you for joining me, and make sure you guys check out Typhur Culinary on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You can look up their website, but like you said, there's not a whole lot of stuff on Typhur's website right now. But just make sure you follow them on Facebook, because there's going to be some interesting things coming out. And you said the pictures of the prototype will be out here soon. So
we're doing product photography next week, so it'll be out and about here very, very soon. Yeah.
Absolutely. So if they follow you on Facebook, they'll eventually, in the next couple of weeks, they'll see some pictures of it.
Yeah, and we'll be, any kind of new developments and all that, we'll be putting that out through social as well.
All righty. Well, thanks, Owen. I appreciate it again, and look forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me on, Darren.
I appreciate it. I'll see you in the next one.
All right. Take care.
Well, there you have it, guys. Introduction to Owen Wyatt of Typhur Culinary. Make sure you check out Typhur Culinary on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and keep an eye on them. They'll be coming out with some great products. Make sure you follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and I'll see you again on the next Fire and Water Cooking Podcast.